For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On the evening of a full moon in 2007, 31-year-old Armin Yazdi headed into the vast expanse of Saguaro National Park, Arizona, for a night sky shoot. He never returned. Despite an extensive search by park rangers and SAR teams, Armin Yazdi vanished without a trace into the rugged Rincon Mountain foothills. For 10 agonizing years, his family and the close-knit astrophotography community lived with crushing uncertainty, clinging to the slimmest hope. Then, in 2017, a discovery was made deep within a remote wash, a snapped tripod leg, lodged beneath flood debris. This is the complete investigation into what happened to Armin Yazdi, a mystery spanning a decade of the desert's silent secrets. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. Armin Yazdi, at 31 years old, was more than just a photographer. He was an artist obsessed with the ephemeral beauty of the night sky, particularly as it unfolded over the stark, majestic landscapes of the Sonoran Desert. His canvas was Saguaro National Park, a sprawling expanse of protected wilderness in Arizona, where the ancient saguaro cacti stood as silent sentinels against the cosmic drama above. Yazdi possessed a profound reverence for this environment, often spending solitary nights under the vast, unpolluted skies, meticulously composing shots that captured the moon's ascent, the Milky Way's glow, or the fleeting trails of meteors. His dedication was absolute, driving him to the most remote corners of the park in pursuit of the perfect frame. On a crisp evening in 2007, Yazdi embarked on one such photographic odyssey, venturing deep into the Rincon Mountain foothills, a particularly rugged and isolated section of Saguaro National Park. The objective was a moonrise shoot, an event he had meticulously planned, anticipating the dramatic interplay of light and shadow across the desert floor as the lunar disk emerged. The terrain here was unforgiving, a labyrinth of dry washes, rocky outcrops, and dense scrub, where temperatures could plummet drastically after sunset. Yet these challenges were precisely what drew Yazdi, offering unparalleled opportunities for his unique brand of astrophotography. As the moon began its ascent, painting the landscape in ethereal silver, Yazdi communicated via radio, a standard safety protocol for solo excursions into such remote areas. His final transmission was brief, yet characteristic of his relentless pursuit of artistry. He stated he was chasing one more frame along a dry arroyo, a natural drainage channel often carved deep into the desert floor by infrequent but violent flash floods. The message conveyed a sense of urgency, a photographer unwilling to let a perfect moment escape. Then, silence. The following morning, the desert sun cast long shadows over a scene that would soon become the epicenter of a baffling mystery. Armin Yazdi's olive-green Jeep was discovered precisely where he had left it, parked at a remote pullout along the park's unpaved access road. The vehicle was undisturbed, its doors locked, but its owner was nowhere to be found. His extensive photographic equipment, the tools of his passion, had also vanished. The vast, indifferent wilderness of Saguaro National Park had swallowed Armin Yazdi whole, leaving behind only his empty vehicle and an unsettling quiet. The silence, initially just the absence of a radio signal, now extended to a man, his work, and the questions that would haunt an investigation for years to come. The discovery of Armin Yazdi's abandoned Jeep at the remote pullout triggered an immediate and urgent response. Park protocols for missing persons in the wilderness were swiftly activated, transforming the quiet desert morning into a hive of coordinated activity. Brent Haskins, a seasoned veteran of search and rescue operations in the Sonoran Desert, assumed command, mobilizing an extensive team that included park rangers, local sheriff's deputies, and dedicated SAR volunteers. Their primary objective was to locate Yazdi alive within the unforgiving terrain. NPS Ranger Leela Sandoval, intimately familiar with the park's vast and treacherous landscapes, played a crucial role from the outset. Her knowledge of the Rincon Mountain foothills, combined with her understanding of desert survival dynamics, proved invaluable in shaping the initial search parameters. Ground teams, equipped with GPS dev, ICEs and two-way radios, fanned out from the Jeep's location. Their efforts concentrated on the network of dry arroyos and washes where Yazdi had last reported being. K-9 units were deployed. Their keen senses hoped to pick up a scent trail that might lead to the missing photographer. Overhead, helicopters provided an aerial perspective, scanning the rugged canyons and dense saguaro forests for any sign of human presence or discarded equipment. The search was extensive, covering hundreds of square miles of the Rincon Mountain foothills. Yet, the desert itself presented formidable challenges. The terrain was a labyrinth of steep canyons, impassable rock formations, and thick, thorny vegetation that could conceal a person just feet away. Daytime temperatures soared, while nights brought a sharp, dangerous chill, adding to the urgency of the situation. Compounding these difficulties was the almost complete absence of physical evidence. Beyond his Jeep, no trace of Armin Yazdi, his camera, his tripod, or any other personal item could be found. There were no footprints, no dropped lenses, no discarded water bottles, nothing to indicate his direction of travel or any struggle. Despite the exhaustive efforts of dozens of searchers, the vastness of Saguaro National Park yielded no answers. Days bled into weeks, the initial hope slowly eroding as each grid search returned empty. Theories circulated among the teams. Had Yazdi fallen, injured himself in a remote wash? Was he disoriented, succumbing to exposure? Could a sudden, localized flash flood, common even in dry arroyos, have swept him away, leaving no visible trace? Or had something more sinister occurred in the isolated wilderness? Without a single piece of evidence, every possibility remained unconfirmed, leaving a void where answers should have been, and deepening the mystery of Armin Yazdi's disappearance. The initial, frantic energy of the search for Armin Yazdi could not be sustained indefinitely against the vast indifference of the desert. Days bled into weeks, then months, each passing sunrise failing to bring the closure so desperately sought by his family and the dedicated search teams. The intensive ground patrols and aerial surveys, once characterized by their urgent optimism, gradually diminished in frequency and scope. Every dry wash had been meticulously combed, every boulder field scrutinized, every remote canyon explored, yet the unforgiving landscape consistently yielded nothing but its own ancient silence. The sheer scale of Saguaro National Park, combined with the complete absence of any physical trace, proved an insurmountable obstacle for even the most experienced search and rescue professionals. Lead after lead, however tenuous, was pursued with unwavering dedication. Park rangers followed up on infrequent reports of abandoned equipment or unusual activity, but each inquiry led to a dead end, unrelated to Yazdi's disappearance. Without a single piece of new evidence, no discarded item, no confirmed sighting, no sign of struggle or accident, the active investigation eventually reached its natural, frustrating conclusion. The resources allocated to the immediate search, once substantial, were gradually reprioritized. The case of Armin Yazdi transitioned from an urgent, active search to a cold file, a testament to the desert's capacity to conceal its secrets with unsettling finality. This was not a formal closure, for the National Park Service policy dictated that missing persons cases were never truly closed. Instead, Yazdi's file became inactive, carefully archived, perpetually awaiting the spark of new information that might reignite the investigation. But that spark did not come for a very long time. For 10 long years, the disappearance of Armin Yazdi remained an unsolved enigma, a gaping void in the lives of those who knew him. His family endured a decade without answers, caught in a suspended state of grief and uncertainty, forever scanning news reports and hoping for a breakthrough that never materialized. Within the park community, his story became a somber legend, a stark reminder of the wilderness's power and the fragile line between passion and peril. The vast expanse of the Rincon Mountain foothills held its counsel, and the silence surrounding Armin Yazdi's fate deepened with each passing year, leaving only questions in its wake. 10 years had passed since Armin Yazdi vanished into the vastness of Saguaro National Park, a decade of silence, of unanswered questions, and of a cold case file gathering dust in the archives of the National Park Service. The park itself had continued its timeless cycle of seasons, but for Armin's family, and for the dedicated investigators who had once scoured its rugged terrain, time had stood still, perpetually tethered to that fateful night in 2007. Then, without warning, the desert decided to relinquish a piece of its secret. It was a routine patrol by a park maintenance crew, clearing storm debris from a remote section of a major wash that snaked through the Rincon Mountain foothills. Monsoon rains, uncharacteristically heavy that year, had reshaped the landscape, carving new channels and depositing an accumulation of branches, rocks, and the occasional piece of human detritus. As one of the crew members worked to dislodge a particularly stubborn tangle of mesquite branches and sediment, his hand brushed against something cold and metallic. Buried deep beneath the recent flood debris, wedged firmly against a large granite boulder, was a length of anodized aluminum. It was a snapped tripod leg, clearly broken with considerable force, its metallic sheen dulled by years of exposure and the abrasive action of sand and water. The discovery was immediately recognized as significant. Tripods were not common items to find in such a remote, wild section of the park, especially one bearing the marks of a high-quality photographic instrument. The leg was carefully extracted and immediately reported to park authorities. Within hours, the item was identified. Etched into its base, beneath layers of desert grime, were faint but discernible serial numbers. Cross-referenced with the inventory of Armin Yazdi's missing equipment from 2007, the match was unequivocal. This was a piece of Armin's specialized photographic tripod, the very equipment he had taken with him on his moonrise shoot a decade prior. This single, fractured piece of metal represented the first tangible link to Armin Yazdi in 10 years. It was more than just a piece of equipment. It was a beacon, cutting through the long night of uncertainty that had enveloped the case. Its location, lodged beneath flood debris, offered a crucial insight. It had been carried by the powerful, intermittent waters of the desert wash, suggesting its original resting place was further upstream, deeper within the unyielding landscape. The discovery reignited a dormant flicker of hope, not just for answers, but for the possibility of understanding the events of that distant night. The cold case of Armin Yazdi, once a static file, was now officially reopened, the snapped tripod leg becoming the unlikely key to unlocking a decade of silence. The discovery of Armin Yazdi's snapped tripod leg, unearthed from a decade of desert concealment, immediately transformed from a mere artifact into the singular, most critical piece of evidence in a now-reopened cold case. Forensic specialists, under the renewed direction of the National Park Service and local law enforcement, approached the aluminum shaft with a reverence reserved for objects capable of speaking across time. Every millimeter of its surface, every fracture and abrasion, was subjected to an exhaustive battery of tests. High-resolution microscopy revealed intricate patterns of wear and impact, suggesting the precise manner in which the leg had failed. Spectrographic analysis aimed to identify any residual organic material, fibers, or trace elements that might have clung to the metal over the years, offering clues about its final moments before being swept away. The goal was not merely to confirm its origin, which was already established, but to extract every conceivable detail about its journey and the circumstances surrounding its breakage. NPS Ranger Leela Sandoval, who had been instrumental in the initial, fruitless search a decade prior, found herself re-engaging with the Yazdi case with a renewed sense of purpose and a palpable shift in the investigative atmosphere. The previous search had been a blind endeavor, chasing ghosts across a vast landscape. Now, there was a tangible object, a physical anchor to the events of that distant night. Her intimate knowledge of the park's topography and ecology, once applied to broad search grids, was now focused on the precise location of the tripod's discovery and the hydrology of the wash that had carried it. The Park Service, bolstered by advancements in forensic science and mapping tech, knowledges unavailable in 2007, committed significant resources to this second wave of investigation, eager to leverage every new tool at their disposal. The new evidence compelled a complete re-evaluation of the initial search parameters and the theories that had guided them. Old topographic maps, once marked with expansive search sectors, were now overlaid with hydrological data, tracing the potential upstream origins of the tripod leg. Initial witness statements, however sparse, were revisited, scrutinized for any overlooked detail that might now resonate with the specific characteristics of the tripod's fracture or its environmental context. The early assumptions, a simple fall, disorientation, or a flash flood, were not discarded, but rather re-examined through the lens of this new, concrete clue. The tripod leg, in its broken state, suggested a specific event, a moment of impact or stress that had been entirely absent from the original, speculative narrative. Among the initial, pivotal findings from the forensic examination was the pronounced presence of desert varnish on the tripod's aluminum surface. This natural, dark coating, formed over long periods by microbial activity and mineral deposition, served as a chronological record of the tripod's exposure to the elements. Its even distribution suggested a prolonged period of undisturbed weathering. However, closer inspection revealed subtle, yet critical, anomalies within this ancient patina. The desert varnish itself, an environmental fingerprint, now held the potential to reveal not just where the tripod had been, but what had transpired around it, offering a silent testimony to the decade of its hidden existence. The desert varnish, that slow-forming, dark patina coating the aluminum tripod leg, had initially been considered merely a chronological marker of its decade-long exposure. However, under the meticulous gaze of forensic analysis, it began to yield far more crucial information. Specialists, utilizing advanced scanning electron microscopy, detected microscopic particles embedded within the varnish itself. These were not natural desert minerals, nor were they typical environmental contaminants. Instead, the analysis confirmed the presence of distinct soot particles, a residue unmistakably produced by combustion. The desert varnish, often thought of as a passive recorder of time, had actively captured and preserved evidence of a specific event. This discovery was immediately recognized as a profound breakthrough. The soot, once definitively identified, pointed to one inescapable conclusion. An undocumented campfire had burned in the vicinity of Armin Yazdi's tripod. This was significant because Armin's last known activity was a moonrise shoot, a solitary pursuit that would not typically involve building a fire. The presence of campfire soot suggested human activity in a remote area of Saguaro National Park that was not part of Armin's planned itinerary, nor was it consistent with his solitary photographic endeavors. It introduced an entirely new and potentially unsettling element into the narrative of his disappearance. Armed with the knowledge of a clandestine campfire and its likely location, investigators initiated an ingenious cross-referencing operation. They began to meticulously comb through years of park records, searching not for missing persons, but for backcountry citations issued for illegal campfires, unauthorized entry into restricted zones, or any other infractions that might indicate undocumented human presence in the Rincon Mountain foothills. This painstaking process, leveraging digital databases and geographical information systems, eventually flagged a series of old, sporadic citations that clustered around a particular, less traveled sector of the park, upstream from where the tripod leg had been found. The clustering of these minor infractions, previously dismissed as isolated incidents, now formed a discernible pattern. It pointed to the existence of a bootleg trail, an unofficial, unmarked route used by individuals seeking to bypass established park regulations or access more secluded areas. Following this faint, often overgrown path, a small team of rangers, including Lila Sandoval, ventured into a section of the foothills that had been deemed too rugged or unlikely during the initial, broad search. The trail led them deeper into a hidden side canyon, a narrow, winding defile carved by ancient waters. There, concealed from casual observation, they found it. A siphon pour-off, a geological feature where water, under certain conditions, could create a powerful, localized suction, capable of moving significant debris. This discovery, born from a microscopic speck of soot, fundamentally altered the entire understanding of Armin Yazdi's disappearance, offering a concrete, albeit chilling, explanation for how his equipment might have been moved and where he might have ultimately vanished. The bootleg trail and the siphon pour-off fundamentally reshaped the narrative of Armin Yazdi's disappearance. No longer was it merely a case of a photographer lost to the desert's vastness or a simple accident. The presence of the undocumented campfire soot, carefully preserved within the desert varnish, introduced the undeniable element of unrecorded human activity in a secluded area. This, combined with the discovery of the clandestine trail leading to the dangerous siphon pour-off, painted a new, more complex picture. It suggested that Armin might have stumbled upon this hidden activity, or perhaps, in his quest for one more frame, ventured unknowingly into a zone where he encountered individuals who wished to remain unseen, or simply fell victim to a treacherous natural feature previously unknown to searchers. For NPS Ranger Lila Sandoval and SAR lead Brent Haskins, this breakthrough was both a vindication of their perseverance and a stark reminder of the desert's capacity for concealment. They now possessed a concrete focal point for their renewed efforts, a specific location to investigate with precision, rather than the broad, speculative searches of a decade prior. The bootleg trail and the canyon became the new epicenter of their inquiry, allowing them to reevaluate the initial search parameters and theories with an unprecedented level of granular detail. The discovery of the pour-off, in particular, provided a plausible mechanism for the violent breakage of the tripod leg and its subsequent transport downstream, a missing piece of the puzzle that had eluded them for so long. Astrophotographer May Kato, a peer and admirer of Yazdi's work, offered a poignant perspective on the implications of the discovery. She explained how Armin's dedication to capturing the night sky often led photographers to extremely remote and challenging environments, pushing the boundaries of safety for the sake of art. Armin would have been focused on his lens on the moonrise, Kato mused, oblivious to anything but that perfect shot. A hidden trail, a sudden drop-off, or an unexpected encounter in such isolation could easily turn fatal. The siphon pour-off represented a natural trap, a localized hazard capable of sweeping away a person and their equipment without a trace, only to release a fragment years later. While the exact fate of Armin Yazdi remained unconfirmed by a full recovery, the evidence provided a powerful, if incomplete, resolution. The decade of silence had been broken, not by Armin himself, but by the desert's slow, deliberate unveiling of a single, telling clue. The case, though still holding its deeper mysteries, had been fundamentally transformed. It underscored the relentless dedication of investigators like Sandoval and Haskins, who refused to let a case die, and the profound, often brutal lessons of the wilderness. Armin Yazdi vanished chasing a dream, and a microscopic speck of soot, preserved by the very desert he loved, finally illuminated the path he may have taken.